My name is Kim Murphy, and I'm the marketing specialist at Birch Hill, our Riverwoods Manchester location. And I just wanted to welcome everyone. Before we get started, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. Everyone is on mute to begin, but you're all welcome to ask questions in the Q&A function down below, and you can submit them at any time. This presentation is being recorded, and a copy will be sent to everyone following in a few days. And any suggestions that you might have to improve are always welcome. As I mentioned, this is Birch Hill's debut webinar in a series for the summer. So if you have any topics or ideas, feel free to pass them on. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time, and we'll get to Bill. But first, I just wanted to share a little bit of information about the Riverwoods Group. It was founded in 1994 in Exeter, New Hampshire, and since opened two additional campuses in Exeter. Birch Hill became a Riverwoods community in 2016, and Riverwoods Durham opened in November of 2019. And the term SPE is the very scientific term for someplace else. So we don't know what's quite next yet, but more to come there. Hopefully. There's a question mark. And, just wanted to share a little bit more information about what we are. Educating about a CCRC or continuing care retirement community is a lot of what we do. This is an insurance product, and our contracts are regulated by the state of operation, which is New Hampshire. And that means that our financial performance is reported annually. And this is also considered prepaying for insurance. So that means a portion of the entrance fee and the monthly service fee are both tax deductible. And this is also considered a choice of optimism or a lifestyle choice. So you would enter while you're living independently to free yourself from the burdens of home maintenance and chores, and transportation is provided, a full calendar of activities, fitness, education, and trips. And you really get the benefit of increased social interactions, which is really vital in times like these. And, most importantly, you are staying in control of your future healthcare decisions. You're not leaving it up to chance or leaving it to burdening a family member with those decisions. The next slide just talks a little bit about the minimum age of entry, which is 62. There are 3 levels of care in a CCRC. There are 3 levels of living: independent living, assisted living, and nursing care. At Birch Hill, we also offer memory support. All the Riverwoods communities do. And you can transition between the levels of care as needed. So if you have a bad winter and, have pneumonia and need to transition for respite care for a few days and come back after you've gotten on your feet, the door doesn't close behind you. You're able to transition as needed with 30 days in nursing care each year or assisted living. There are services and amenities provided at every level. I mentioned a little bit on the last slide, but there's also housekeeping, meals are provided, and a whole calendar of intellectual presentations. I talked about the fees, and something that's kind of unique to CCRCs, mostly nonprofit, is this benevolence clause, which is really comforting. So if you are living such a vivacious life that you outlive your assets, you can apply for benevolence, and if the community can sustain, they'll cover your monthly service fees for your time in the community, so you won't be asked to leave. Today's featured community is Birch Hill, which has a long-standing history in Manchester. Some people might know it as Pearl Manor or Hillcrest Terrace, but it became a CCRC in 2009, and this is the only Type B contract, I believe, in the state of New Hampshire currently. We became a Riverwoods community in 2016, and we've had some renovations completed to the community that are just gorgeous. All of the apartment homes have been completely renovated, and some have the opportunity for residents to pick their finishes when they move in. Another interesting note is that Birch Hill currently has immediate availability due to us taking the apartments offline to completely renovate them. So there's no long waiting list like you'd find at other communities. And we are located in a beautiful country setting, despite our address in Manchester. It is just 10 minutes from downtown, but in a really lovely country setting. And we have the benefit of a 600-acre nature preserve right across the street. You wouldn't expect that, but it's beautiful. If you check out the Birch Hill Facebook or other Instagram or social media pages, we post photos from the heronry quite often. Another interesting, I briefly mentioned earlier that Birch Hill is a Type B contract, but we are the first in New England to offer a 70% flexible contract. We only know one other community in the United States that offers this down in Texas. So what is so interesting about this contract is that you can use your 70% entrance fee to pay for your care in assisted living, nursing care, or memory care during your lifetime. Or you can choose to save the 70% entrance fee to be refunded to your estate or as asset preservation. So it's flexible, it keeps your costs predictable, and it really is a better value in comparison to a traditional Type B contract. So this is really interesting, and if you have more questions specifically about contracts, at the end of the presentation, I'll tell you a little bit more about another webinar we're offering at the end of July that will go into contract types more specifically. But for now, I will go ahead and introduce Bill Weidacher, who's a full-time realtor and has been for more than 30 years. And he has an extensive record at the local, state, and national level. Twice been named Realtor of the Year for the Greater Manchester National Board of Realtors, and has served as that board's president-elect, second vice president, treasurer, and director. So just about everything, huh? To serving nearly every committee at the board level. So welcome, Bill, and take it away.
Well, thanks, Kim. I have to say, this is my third presentation with the Birch Hill community, Riverwoods, and this is my second virtual one, but the first one I got to see your facility, and I have to say, you kind of undersold it a little bit there. I really was just amazed. It was my first time there last year, and was just amazed at the community and how beautiful it is. So a little bit of a plug there for Birch Hill. Let's talk a little bit about a few things about the real estate world, me being a realtor, and then I'll talk some numbers, but I'm going to do this from about 30,000 feet today, only because I want to give you a little background, but I don't want to, I think especially on online presentations, the numbers can start to get overwhelming, and there's not going to be a written quiz at the end of this. If you have further questions, certainly will be available for you. So we're going to cover some things with regard to the market, what it's like to sell in a buyer's market or a seller's market, home buying, selling, Q&A, that kind of thing. Realtors, first of all, adhere to a very strict code of ethics that the average licensee does not. And so make sure you're doing business with a realtor. Not every licensed real estate agent is a realtor. So I would just say that at the outset. We are offering seller agency and buyer agency in our firm, and we disclose that on a regular basis. I do want to move to the elephant in the room, and that is what has COVID-19 and the pandemic done in the real estate market? Because I think that's a question that's on everybody's mind, and maybe on yours today. So let's talk a little bit about it. Inventory had been high 6 or 7 years ago, But much of that was bought up in the last 10 years and is now really low. And you're going to see some numbers that are, these slides are a little bit just a skosh dated because they were done a couple months ago, and now they're really low. Prices in 2019 were at a historic high. We've actually been beyond that now in 2020. Interest rates are the lowest they've been since 1971. So, we're looking at 50-year lows on interest rates, and many people have refinanced their mortgages, and many buyers are buying now because of these interest rate lows, and you'll see some numbers in a minute. This will just give you a little bit of an idea, again, what the state numbers looked like last year. So there were 17,000 units sold last year, and the median sales price, that's the entire state, which was up about 0.3%. So that just tells you that literally we were about the same market in 2018 as we were in 2019, except for the prices. Prices are up 6% last year. And, that is a really healthy increase in pricing appreciation this year and last year, 6 percentage points. And it's amazing when we look at these numbers, because that's not a sustainable increase in value year after year after year, especially when you see wage increases and inflation somewhere in the 2-3 percentage point range. Appreciating beyond that year after year after year, just sooner or later it becomes unsustainable in my experience in the last 37 years. So this tells you a little bit about what things looked like, and I really love giving people a historical perspective of what has happened in the market. If you look at the right-hand column here, you'll see from 1998 through, at least on this slide, a 112% increase in pricing. And that just gives you an idea what the appreciation rates looked like in the state of New Hampshire. 1999, 7%, 2000, 15%, 2001, 14%. You see it continuing on there. 112% growth from 1998 to 2005. And then keeping on, when we get to 2006, you'll notice, oops, something's going on here. And you'll notice the beginning of the slide, and there was that housing bubble that all of a sudden, really the financial crisis took over, the housing bubble burst, and you'll notice what happened, a 25% drop from 2006 to 2011. And really, that is a good way of looking at this information, Kim, because it tells us, when we look back at it, we can kind of maybe figure out what the future, what we can take from it and learn from it in the future. And here's 2012 through 2019. You'll notice 2013 was really the year we started to climb out of the financial crisis. 8.9% increase in pricing. Now, part of the reason that is because properties, in my opinion, having worked through this market, were undervalued in 2011 and 12, meaning the bottom was below the bottom, if that makes any sense. And so we saw buyers and sellers come flooding back into the market in terms of units and in terms of prices in 2012 and 2013. And then you see the growth again, up 40%. So now we're at 300,000. If you go back, I'm just going to go back to this slide very quickly. You'll notice in 2006, we were at 265, the top line there, and 270 in 2005. So if you look at that, you really get to realize it took us till 2017 to catch back up to the 2005 numbers as a result of the last housing and financial, downturn. So that gives you a sense of what can happen in a market shift. Okay, going forward. This is always interesting because I lived through this, and this is what the prices looked like in 2007, 8, and 9. So during that period, it was straight downhill. And if you made your decisions based on that, it looked very scary. We're going to lose money. It's going down further and further and further. And yet, here's what it actually looked like. That little blip of time, when you look at everything, was just a period of that economic downturn. And then you'll notice it here in graph form, started to level out and started to climb back up. I think this is helpful because it gives you a sense of markets of the moment really don't matter unless it's your moment. And I have found that people that have high equity positions, slight changes that happen over time shouldn't affect them in housing, shouldn't affect them in their investment portfolios. It's just you take everything in the context that it's in. So I hope that's helpful. Real estate's a sound long-term investment, period, because people, unlike other forms of investment, real estate on the residential side, which is primarily where I do most of my business, is not always bought as an investment. It ends up being a pretty sound one, but usually people buy it because they need to live somewhere. They want a bigger house. They want a smaller house. They want a house closer to town. They want a house farther away from you. Get the point. It really becomes what is the shelter that they're going to live in, raise a family in, look like for them. And it ends up being an asset after the fact that is appreciated over time. It's really all about the fundamentals, and I think that's the most important part. Lawrence Yun, who's the chief economist for the National Association of Realtors, and he's an interesting guy because I found him to always be very candid. He's neither optimist nor pessimist. He's realist, and he says you have to understand the facts. The housing market was exceptionally strong, and we hit a pause button here in this pandemic, and that it will recover. So we're going to talk a little bit about the national picture. Here's what we see is a contraction in the housing market in 2018, and the forecast was for just some modest change prior to this pandemic. What we're seeing is that home prices rose at a modest pace, nationally speaking, and we saw a more than modest pace. And the forecast was for slower price growth in 2020. At the end of the year, it looked like 2020 could be a breakout year based on the fundamentals. And then the coronavirus comes in, and we notice this record loss of jobs, this huge amount of anxiety being involved in the home buying and the home selling process. And then with this uncertainty this idea was, well, my goodness, oftentimes in periods of uncertainty, people freeze. They're not sure what to do, so the decision is to just stop, take a pause. And then, of course, the stay-at-home order came into effect on the 27th of March. And our industry was deemed essential, and we had conditions placed upon us. Now, the reason the governor placed us in the essential status was because so many people need and require housing as a basic need. And many people had made financial decisions to buy and sell or rent and lease property prior to the pandemic. And those decisions typically take 60 to 90 days once there's a contract in place. And so you can see how the timing, I wrote a letter to Governor Sununu myself to say, what do we tell the clients who are scheduled to move? What do we tell them? How do we handle all of this? Because there were people that had bought houses in other parts of the country and were moving, people that had made moves similar to what you might be considering. There was a whole bunch of people that had made moves. So we needed to prevail upon the governor. The governor did deem us an essential industry and has continued to. So we had some good conditions early on. There was no meetings in our offices. Showings were only by appointment with appropriate social distancing. Closings were done in remote locations. Actually, we closed a fair amount of transactions with law firms and closing companies in the parking lots of our offices, where the buyers and the sellers could sit in their cars and sign their paperwork, and many things have changed as a result of this pandemic. We've even allowed for remote notarization of documents now in the state, and it's going to be interesting to see what changes stay as a result of what we've gone through. Property inspections and appraisals were allowed to continue. Open houses were not permitted, and that continued in place up until about 10 days ago on Tuesday. Open houses are now allowed again, and the interesting thing is that really comes down to the seller client and the real estate agent having a discussion about what that might look like. But they are allowed, and I will just say that on the properties that we're holding open, we are enforcing social distancing, and we're just holding people off from going into the house so that we don't end up with lots of crowding. And we've, most cases are looking to have more than one real estate agent there, usually two, so that we can handle a couple of people at a time. And we're being appropriate. We're being more vigilant about making sure that doors are left open so that nobody has to touch anything, that kind of thing. But my goodness, you'll see in the numbers in a minute why it really is quite interesting time to be selling, and a good time. The market has persisted. Our business practices we've modified to be very safe. We do know that people do have life events that are causing them to want to buy and sell. While we've seen a decline in some of the sales numbers, I think you'll be blown away when you see what these numbers really mean, not to the extent that some have thought. So here's the data, and this is really recent, Kim. We've run the numbers through May. Of course, we don't have the June numbers, but I did do some research, and I've got some slides here through yesterday. So there's some really fresh information I have to share with your guests this morning. First of all, the May sales are down 25% from last year's May, but prices are up statewide by 7%. The median price was the highest ever for May, is $320. And if you remember, gang, based on the numbers that we looked at for the year end last year, we ended the year at 300. And so now you can see 320 is how May ended. Contracts have outpaced listings, and I'm going to give you some more data on that in just a minute. Homes are coming off the market faster than they're going on the market. And I will elaborate a little bit about that. The year started with really low inventory, and now it's even lower. I must say, I started in this business 1983 when I was 21 years old. I'm 58 now. You can do the reverse math, but I'll save you the time. It's 37 years in the business. And in 37 years, I've seen low inventory markets. And last year was one of them. This year, prior to COVID-19, so in the first quarter, I really started to ponder whether this year was going to be the first year where inventory, or the lack of it, would cause less sales than the year before, because there wasn't enough homes to sell. And I had never experienced that, because usually in good markets, that vacuum of low inventory doesn't last very long, because if the prices start rising to the demand that's out there, it brings out sellers that say, oh my goodness, I should sell now. So I wondered whether that was going to change, not knowing that a pandemic would basically change that inventory and exacerbate the problem even further, which is maybe good news for people that are looking to sell, and you'll see what I mean. So I look at these numbers every single month because I think it's important to be the local economist of choice for my clients. And so I can only do the research that gives me some data that will allow our clients to be more thoughtful in their decision-making process. So this is information I look at every single month. I look at closed sales, I look at median sale prices, days on market, pending sales, month supply. You see all this information is all done for me. It's tracked, and I look at it month to month to month. I do want to just spend a couple of moments on a couple of these data points. Number one, if you look at the top line, closed sales. If we just look to the right of the bar charts, you'll notice that the units were down 25%, 24.8% May over May. And you'll notice that for the year, we're down about 8.4%. A lot of that reason is what has happened in the May numbers and the April numbers, because those numbers were off. Median sales price up 7%. And if you look year to date, same thing. You know, we're up 7% year to date. We're also up 6.6 May over May. I go down a little further to the middle of this graph here to the pending sales. And I'll notice if I look at the year-to-date numbers all the way to the right, our pending sales are down 7.7%. But for the month of May, you'll notice they're up 0.9. Essentially, the month of May of 2020, COVID-19, was the same month as 2019. So the market came really back on pending transactions in the month of May, which means there were plenty of buyers out there. I look at the month supply. There's two months of supply in the state. It's down 40%. And then there's no surprise there if you go down two ticks down to homes for sale. This piece of data here just sort of says how many homes are on the market at the end of May versus the end of May last year. And you'll notice last year at this time, there were 5,084 homes for sale. And this year, there are 3,000. That's a 40% drop in inventory. Now, I'm going to tell you that means we're close to half as much inventory as we should have had on the market last year, which was a low inventory year also. We're even lower. Condominiums, by the way, as an interesting aside, were off by exactly 50%. There was half as many properties on the market in the condo world this year than last year. List price to sale price ratio, 98.6%. That's quite something. You know, it's as close to full price as you get, really. I mean, we're 1.4% off. And then the affordability indexes just tells you that homes are tracking around the same point as where they were last year, a little bit up in terms of affordability. We look at some information in closed sales. It's just another way to look at it. And I look at those numbers. I spend most of the time, as I said, on the critical data points I just went over with you. But this is just gives me an idea. I'm able to look back just the last 2 years for data. Median sales prices gives me some historical perspective there. New listings, again, some historical perspective. Inventory. This just shows me, it goes back to the last 15 years at the bottom here, and it just gives you a historical look at, we kind of peaked out close to 15,000 properties on the market in gold around 2010-ish, and you'll notice that's been a steady drop down to where we are now somewhere around 3,000. It's interesting to look at that. You go, well, close to 15,000, now 3,000. Very, very different market. So here's the data that I said is fresh. This is from yesterday morning, Kim. Demand is really continuing to outpace our supply by a lot. This is the last 30 days. Now, I did this because I look at my information in Hillsborough County, Rockingham County, and Merrimack County. So essentially, Hillsborough County is the southern tier, Rockingham is the seacoast and portions of the southern tier, and Merrimack County is kind of the capital region. And so they're the three most populated counties also. So I separate the numbers out by county, and then I do it by statewide. So you'll notice, to give you a sense, Hillsborough County, last 30 days, there were 548 contracts. What that means is 548 buyers put a deposit on a house with 548 sellers. They signed a purchase and sale agreement. That's what we call one contract. Buyer and a seller sign a purchase and sale agreement 548 times in the last 30 days in Hillsborough County. 179 listings means this. How many newly listed properties came on the market in the last 30 days? 179. So I did the math for us, and that just says that buyers are outstripping new sellers 3.1 to 1. Call it 3 to 1. For every listing that comes on, 3 listings go under agreement. That is not sustainable, not with the inventory levels that we have right now. And that's good news if you're a property owner who's looking to sell, because it's fairly easy sale right now. With your real estate professional guiding you through it. But that gives you an idea of what it would be like in Hillsborough County. Rockingham, not much different. 538 contracts, 194 properties newly listed. That's a ratio of 2.8 buyers to every new seller. And then, of course, Merrimack County is also 2.8 to 1. The numbers are a little smaller, but that's because the counties, in terms of population, is a little smaller. And then, I ran the numbers for you statewide as well. And that just shows you that entire state is running at about 2.6 buyers to every new seller that comes on the market through the last 30 days. So, this is a time where traditionally you'd say, well, my goodness, why is that? Buyers want to buy to satisfy a housing need, and they are not afraid of what they're doing, because in most cases they're fairly socially distant anyway in their role as the buyer. Think about it. In most cases, their agent meets them at a property. They go inside the property. There's nobody else there. Typically, now sellers are not in the house. They're out taking a drive, or they're out somewhere. And so really the buyers walk through. Now we just ask them not to really touch anything, and they walk through. They know pretty quickly. And what we're noticing is that the buyers spend a lot of time making really sure they want to physically see the property there, because they spend a lot of time looking at it online. So now more than ever, it's important to really have a good online presence and presentation, if you will, of your property, so that buyers can make that decision. We've even had lots of buyers buy sight unseen. I never thought that would be the case over the years, but this is an interesting time, and it's brought about interesting measures. So I hope those numbers are helpful. Inventory is the difference in a seller's market. There's fewer homes. You've got all the leverage as a seller. There's multiple offers. We're finding, all kinds of stories out there, and I could just tell you as many as 15, 20 offers on properties, but usually 2, 3, or 4. We even had a seller, think of this. This is just blow your mind. We even had a seller that said, I don't want to do any more showings. We've got too many offers already. How does that happen? mean, it's because inventory is so low. I mean, I've always thought, well, if I've got 10 offers, wouldn't I like to see 15? But it just becomes, it's that overwhelming in some cases. You know the difference between a seller's market and a buyer's market. There's a little more selection, and sellers have to offer more incentive. So, you know, when is a good time to sell? Well, I would rather sell in a seller's market than a buyer's market. And, you know, this is what we tell buyers. Your prices are going up, and there's unique buyers opportunities out there. Because the thing about residential real estate is you might have the exact same house that your neighbor has in a subdivision, and yet yours is going to be a little different than theirs. Even if it's completely identical, the condition may be different, the location's a bit different. You see my point. So there's always unique buying opportunities. The interest rates are low, you know, and we know that it's not as easy to find property out there, but with good professional help, we're working really hard with our buyers. Take advantage if you're selling. Prices are historically high. Interest rates historically low. I mentioned the multiple offers. Best time to sell, spring. And you might say, I left this word in here because aren't we out of spring? And the answer is we skipped it. The spring market kind of took a pause because of the stay-at-home order and a little bit of the fact that we did notice a big pause with inventory, and now that's coming on pretty good. And so I think what's happening is the spring market is going to be the summer market, and we may find ourselves that the next 6 months is our year, right? In other words, we go through what's taken place, and we just say, all right, we'll condense 12 months worth of business into 6 months. For sellers getting ready, first of all, pick a realtor. Will help you determine your value. You can determine your value today and then just do a reset when you get ready to come on the market if it's a couple of weeks from. In this kind of market, don't just settle on what the number is in, say, June, because in July it could be higher, or in August it could be even higher. You have to look at the market at the moment. Your realtor or I could help you with that. Do an inspection of the physical property, meaning, you know, do a walk around with your advisor to just say, is there anything we need to button up to get the property prepared and staged? And I know a lot of people get really worked up about this. I'm just going to tell you, if you're watching home and garden television, you see all these advisors talk about all the things that need to be done to property. You don't need to be that drastic. You do not. And there are things that we would talk you out of doing rather than do, talk you out of spending money rather than spend. You just have to be strategic. And oftentimes decluttering and painting can go a long way. I tell our clients, paint's $50 in the can, and it's thousands on the wall. And so staging is not something to be too fearful of. It's really just properly presenting the property. You know, here's some national numbers. The bottom line is that we do anticipate things in 2021 to be better than they were in 2020. And it's hard to know for sure because I don't think anybody really has a firm grasp on what the future is going to look like with regard to everything else. So it's really hard to know. And I do find this to be the case. People are making the decisions relative to their life now. That they've got a better understanding of what's going on. And in many cases, we're seeing people make moves as a result of this, that are saying, I'm going to make the move that I've always wanted to make because I'm not waiting. That's all I have, Kim. I do have a few other slides here that I think you might want to talk about a bit.
Yeah, that was a lot of great information. Thanks, Bill. We'll open things up for Q&A now. So if you do have a question for Bill, you can type it right in the Q&A bubble at the bottom of your screen. And we have had a few that came in during your presentation. I just wanted to take a minute and remind everybody about Birch Hill and just display some contact information if you wanted to learn a little bit more. On the next slide, just a reminder about Birchall's next virtual event, which is a great detailed presentation on choosing a CCRC. This talks about the lifestyle, it talks about different contract types, what to look for in a CCRC, what questions to ask in terms of financial stability. And so it's a great resource if you're kind of just starting the journey or want to learn more. So that'll be Wednesday, July 29th at 10 a.m. and you can register for that right on the Birchall website. So we're looking forward to that. So on to the questions. We do have one attendee who asks about planning a downsizing in early 2022 and wonders how much time is sufficient to prepare, sell, and close on a 3-bedroom colonial in Derry. Would you say 4 to 6 months or more?
Well, so the first part of that answer that I would give question is this: you're looking at early 2022, if I understand it correctly. So you're 18 months away from wanting to execute on that move. From the time, so we would work it backward. So from the time you find a buyer that wants to buy your house, it's about 2 months from the time they sign a contract with you to sell it. So that takes us to 16 months. And if you say, well, all right, how long are we looking at on average? The average market time statewide is about 60 days. Now, you got to realize that that number is very much skewed, but because in most cases, things are going under a contract very, very quickly, like within a couple of weeks. And in some cases, within a couple of hours. But let's take the 2-month window to be safe for now. We'll use that average. And so that takes us from 16 months to 14 months. And you think, well, all right, how long would it take for me to pull my property together? Not knowing the property, if we said a couple of months, you're talking about a year, okay? So what we've done is if we're in June now, we're talking about next year around the same time to kind of get ready to get ready, if you will. So I don't think there's ever a time to engage a professional better than right now, because I'm just going to tell you, I'm always interested in talking to people, whether they're 2 years out or 3 years out or 4 years out, because I might be able to help you make some decisions on where you put your money and where you don't put your money. I've had situations where I've been called in to sell a house and the family has spent all kinds of money on things that really don't get them any return. And, that's where I would want to help, is to make sure that we can sort of rationally look at what are the things you might need to do. And then that way, you're ready. And then if things speed up for you, you're at least sort of ticked off a lot of the boxes that you need to get ready. So if you say, oh my God, I got to make this decision more quickly, you kind of have a checklist to go on. And if things slow down, I'm planning on being in the business till I'm 70. So I'm taking sellers right up through the next 12 years. So any of you that are thinking about selling in 2032, I'm your guy, but 2033, maybe not. I hope that helped.
All right. We have another question. This attendee says the house is a mess, lots of repairs needed, there's water damage, boiler, etc., and wonders if there is an alternative to the We Buy Ugly houses that you might recommend.
Yeah, so there are alternatives out there, and you got to realize that some of those companies that you see the signs planted in the grounds, we buy houses for cash, there are these inexpensive signs put all over the place. And then there's these expensive signs, these billboards that say we buy, ugly houses, and television ads. You have to realize that there's a profit motive there. They're going to buy your property. do the work necessary to it and sell it for more. And, I just, you could say, well, I could throw my arms up and say, well, I don't want to do the work anyway, and I don't care. But there are better buyers out there than some of these companies because they're looking to take really big advantage. So they're not looking to just make, a living. They're looking to make a killing. And so I think you got to be careful there. I can't speak to every one of them, and I'm certainly not going to assail any of them. But I will just tell you that, I've worked with a lot of seniors who have looked at these numbers, and if they're not careful, if they don't have somebody looking to help them, they can give them away. And if that's the case, we can find cash buyers out there that might be willing to be a better option than those. So,
well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
We have another question here. The basic gist of this question is that they have an offer. It's an older house on 3.5 acres of property, about a half mile from the beach, and wondering how long it takes to get price quotes from other real estate agents, or any suggestions about how to proceed.
Okay, so they have an offer.
Yep. But they haven't talked with any other agents, and I think she's might be.
I see.
About how long it takes if they wanted to do that.
Okay, so you could probably. It sounds to me, and I may misunderstand the question a little bit, that they have an offer from somebody that wants to buy it, and they want to get a sense of whether or not
Yep.
that's a decent.
It's a pre-market offer or pre-market buyer.
Yep. So I would certainly call an agent and say, look, you can be really candid with an agent, especially if you've got somebody and if you don't, you could call somebody and just say, look, I got an offer. But I don't really know if it's a good offer or not, and that agent should be able to help you because oftentimes, even if the way I would look at it is, let's pretend for a moment the offer was great. I might not necessarily need to be involved in that transaction, although I might be able to help in some way, some smaller way. But there's future business that I might be able to help you or your family with. Oftentimes people look at one transaction and think, well, my goodness, I might lose out here and not there. I can't count the amount of clients that I've done lots of business with, their friends, their family of friends, their friends of family. It just stacks up. So I would just say call in a broker or two and get some idea on pricing. All you're really looking for, if you've already got an offer in hand, you might need to act on it fairly quickly. But you just want to get a sense of whether you're leaving a lot of money on the table. I'd be careful.
Okay. Next question is, my house hasn't hit the market yet, so it seems like there's a lot of bargaining power in not accepting lower than what I've counter offered. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. So, it's interesting because as a seller, when you put your home on the market, the first offer is from you to the marketplace. You're actually making the first offer. You're saying, here's my house, here's my price. What do you think? And most of the time in a regular market, buyers look at the property, and in an average amount of time, you'll get an offer. You might get two, and it's some number a little less than the list price. In this market, if you're priced properly, it's a more than list price. I'm counseling our buyers. The list price is the starting price, and the list price is more than likely going to be lower than the ending price. So I'm counseling buyers to think that way. And so if that's the way I'm counseling buyers, I'm certainly letting sellers know, now's the time to be bold. Here's how you know if you're priced properly. You have multiple offers. Here's how you know you're not priced properly. you have no offers. What I mean by that is this is the best sellers market I've ever seen, Kim. It's 37 years and I've not seen a better one. And, also this is the best marketing that the real estate industry's put in front of the average seller, because everything's advertised through lots of aggregating portals now, where if you've got a house to sell, the world knows about it. And if the world knows about it, and you offer it out at a price, and your representation through photographs and video and things of that nature is out there, and it's done well, and you have a price and terms being offered, and the market doesn't respond, it's essentially said no thank you to your offer. So I would say, look, get some wise counsel from somebody that's got some marketing experience with real estate, and figure out how to properly position your property in the marketplace. And I would say you want to be bold. Now, now's the time. Now is the time. And if you get the number wrong, you can adjust the price. Just don't get wedded to the number if you're going to be bold.
Yeah, okay. That's sound advice.
Thank you.
The question is, how does the condominium market differ from the numbers that you presented today?
So I'd be happy to answer those, give you those numbers at another time. But I will tell you this. It doesn't differ much in terms of average list price to sale price. It doesn't differ much in terms of the lack of inventory. As a matter of fact, it's worse. There's half as much property on the market. Condo prices are always a little less than single families in terms of the historical perspective when we look at the totals. I just can't pull it up on the screen here right now to give you the exact numbers, but it's almost the mirror image of what's going on single family. And we can, literally we could pull those numbers up. If we do this again, Kim, I'll have them for you.
Okay.
And if you have that person send you an email or something, I can respond to that directly.
Absolutely, yes. It looks like a person who registered, so we have contact information we can follow.
Good. All right.
One more question. What is the standard commission for a real estate agent?
So first of all, there's no standard commission. So don't let anyone tell you there's a standard. Meaning, there are different agents that charge different fees. Now, here's what I'll tell you: there are some that charge a flat fee. You can get flat fee commission rates out there, 1-2%, and there are some that just put it into the multiple listing system for a flat number. And then I've seen numbers as high as 7. I've seen 5s and 6s and 4s, and I will tell you, I'll just answer the question directly for the benefit of your folks. The Fine Homes Group at Keller Williams, I charge 5%. Now, I always, when I'm talking to a client, I always say this. There are some brokers out there that charge less, and they should. Because here's the thing, is that the purchase and sale agreement that we use, the standard form, Kim, has 102 blanks in that purchase agreement that are filled in by the broker and the buyers and sellers. And price is 2 of those 102 blanks. And if a client hires the wrong person that's not astute at negotiating skills, they can give 1 or 2 percentage points away in any of those other 100 blanks without the seller even fully recognizing it through the negotiations. It pays to have the right person. I look at it this way. It's never wise to pay too much, but sometimes it's foolish to pay too little. How many of us have bought something at a bargain and found out why after the fact? I've got some of those pieces.
Something similar to that.
Yeah.
We're running short on time, but we have two more questions.
I'll be quick.
Okay, this person asks if they've heard that mortgages are becoming harder to get qualified for, even with good credit. Have you found this to be the case? And is it the expectation that it will only get harder in the near future?
So that is not the case. And that's the interesting thing, that in the early stages, there was some concern, and there was some pause in some markets. And then of course, rumors run rampant. And so, for instance, the jumbo market kind of took a huge pause because the investors that bought the jumbo mortgages took a pause. And that stopped some of the mortgage brokers from being able to write jumbos for about a week. And then that went away almost immediately. There was some questions about FHA and VA, and some rumors about that financing being harder to get. And the credit scores, we saw them tighten up and then loosen up again. And so really, I would say we are pretty close to where we were before in terms of the restrictions that buyers have for buying houses. It's not hard to get mortgage money right now. It is not hard.
All right, and one last question. Can you tell us about realtors that might specialize in working with seniors?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think you want to be able to figure out through talking to people, have you worked with seniors before? Have you helped others like us? Now, I will tell you, I'll give you an example. We have somebody on our team that I have 5 people that work with me, and there is one individual who specializes in it. She's certified in it, and she specializes in being able to work with seniors and help them. And she actually, I think part of the biggest thing is she really enjoys that part of it, Kim. She loves working with people that are making, their last move or their final move or close to their final move. And, somebody that's been in a house for a long period of time. She's really, really adept at it. So I think you need to also, by asking questions and making sure you're comfortable with somebody. So we don't work in every part of the state, and so if somebody's looking for a realtor in another part of the state, that I could maybe offer some assistance there, maybe help find somebody that's certified as a senior specialist.
Wonderful. Well, that's all the questions we have for today, right on time. Our thanks to Bill Weidacher of Keller Williams, Fine Homes and Metropolitan right here in Bedford. Thank you for your time today, everyone.
Thank you, Kim.
Recording of this presentation will be sent to you in just a couple of days.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.